Senator Cassidy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I first met Ken Gordon when he first ran for the House. I was the minority leader in the Senate at the time, and I went over to help him walk because I thought walking was good exercise, if nothing else. I was teaching a class at DU last night, and I walked out in the hallway, and I found this little note, which I wanted to share with you. There is a vitality, a life force, an energy that is translated through you. And because there is only one you in all time, the expression is unique. To me, that sounds so much like Ken Gordon, because in so many ways, he was unique. He was more intelligent than the average bear. I think that was pretty obvious. He took life seriously. He was a man of principle. And he seemed to have conquered this nasty habit we all have of putting our selfish interest before the interest of others. We, myself included, all too often are full of ourselves. We think that what we do here is so important. I've been gone a while. There were a lot of bills that I carried because I guess people thought, well, we used to call it, he can walk the aisle. He can talk to both sides. I don't know how many of those pieces of legislation that were so hard fought are even still on the books. I don't know that there was any contribution, if you will, to the state that lasted for a long time. But I'm hoping that the contributions that Ken made go far beyond the work that he did in this chamber. I think it may have more to do with the example that he set. Those of us in politics are very seldom on the wrong side of an issue when it comes to understanding where the people are. There is one exception, and it's a notable anecdote, I think, for Ken's life, because we now have seen 75% of the voters vote for an amendment to the Constitution that expresses their concern over the corrosive effect of money in politics. That happened in 2012. That's not far in the past. Citizens are concerned about outside money. They're so concerned about outside money that less than 10% for the first time in the history of this country believe that the people who represent us in Congress can actually solve the problems that we face. That's a very disturbing indictment of the whole representative process, if you think about it for a moment. If we have any responsibility at all, it seems like it's to save the institution, to restore that kind of confidence. I believe that that's what Ken was after. You say he cared about the institution, but I think he cared about it in those terms. Not to worship it as a god, but to think about the purpose of the institution. If we don't have the trust of the people that we propose to represent, how do we expect them to follow us? You ever ask yourself that question? We spend so much energy these days tearing one another down that by the time we get elected, nobody trusts us. What are we doing? What's going on with our political system? George Washington maybe was right, when he warned us about political parties. I was reminded when I came back here today, haven't been here in a while, that we've got this huge gap that separates us. We've even got 2 microphones up here. Are we afraid we're going to catch something from the other microphone? And here I am talking into the right one, right? I wish that when I had been in politics, set the kind of example that Ken Gordon set. I had this beautiful speech here. Man, I worked on this thing. late into the night last night, up at 5:30 this morning, and I'm not even paying any attention to it. I apologize for that. But the thing that really impressed me about Ken was his independence. He was what is called an independent moral agency. One thing that we all care about, it would seem, is being somewhat free. We talk about having a free society. I think the reason that he was so concerned about money in politics is because, while we like to think that it doesn't affect us, come on. Come on. The lobbyists that give us the money must believe it affects our vote. It's an investment. They'd quit giving it to us if they didn't think it affected our vote. But we say, oh, it just gives us access, right? I'll listen to you if you do that. I hope that when we have another representative in Congress that they're willing to take my telephone call. Maybe it's going to require me to write a big check before that happens. We have a system now that's awash in politics, and so our other excuse is what? We say you can't be competitive unless you take their money. I know, this is uncomfortable, isn't it? That's what we say. We even insinuate that if you don't take their money, you're a little naive about the political process. I teach ethics now at the University of Denver, and I have for 14 years, and it's given me time to reflect on what I did here. I took money from special interest, and I had to listen to them. I remember one time we were voting on a bill that had some concern for some trial lawyers in town, and one of them had made a $500 donation to my campaign. I was voting the other way, and he came in and he was honest. He said, the reason you should vote with us is because we donated money to your campaign. And I said, well, can't you give me some rational reason why I should do that? There was this long silence, and he says, money's rational? Now money is speech, right? Thank you, Supreme Court of the United States. And between 2012 and 2014, money in politics increased by 400% from special interest. Our constituents do not believe us anymore when we tell them it's not persuasive. When we become dependent upon that money to be here in this chamber and think that we're something special, are we still going to tell ourselves that it's not persuasive? Ken was a very interesting guy. I think of him as being an Aristotelian. Aristotle talks about what the real purpose in life is. He says it's not wealth, it's not the accumulation of power. Those are just means to an end. The end that we seek is happiness, and he used a fancy Greek word for it, and I won't burden you with that. But it's not really happiness, it's fulfillment. It's being proud of the life that you lead, not having to apologize for anything that you do or you think. He said that the way that we become satisfied to that extent is we have to live a life that is virtuous. What does he mean by that, virtuous? Well, Aristotle was a practical philosopher. He always put things in the context of our work. He said we need to figure out what the virtues are that make us do our work better, and he always put it in the context of utility for the community. That's our constituents.
Senator Cassidy, 1 minute remaining. Sorry.
Now I remember the House.
Welcome to the better chamber.
Yeah, thanks. I feel welcome. This was Ken's authentic project, and he adopted those virtues which he thought were important and would make him serve the people better. And eliminating conflicts of interest was high on his list. When a wealthy person dies, the people that are left behind, they fight over the money. That's what he leaves. When a man of power dies, the people that are in line fight over the power. But you know, when a man of principle dies, the whole community feels that there's a hole that's left. And we're left with the question, who now will sacrifice their own self-interest to do this work? Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Appreciate your patience.
Thank you, Senator.